Bring Your Own Security Radio is just about ready to start. Hosted by certified ethical hacker and CISSP Dave the IT Guy. Sit back as we talk about hackers, security, crypto, and other things you should be paying attention to. Along with our many guests, we'll also talk about tools and methods to get the job done to keep your data where it belongs, with you. Okay, Dave is up to the mic and ready to go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, that's right. I am Dave the IT Guy, and I am in the chair and ready to go. Tonight, we're talking about hyperconverged infrastructure, what it means, what it does. Now, granted, we're not going to go into a huge technical deep dive, but because the hospital system I work for has either been testing or using hyperconverged in our production environment, I think I have enough experience with it now for the last year to at least talk about some pros, some cons. Yeah, we're going to drop a few names about companies that we tried. Now, let me just be straight, though. It's not to say that at the end of the day, one company was really worse than the other. What we found was that one company really kind of did what we needed it to do better than the other. But your mileage may vary, right? You might find different reasons to try different things. So I'm not here to slam anybody. I'm here to just kind of tell you how it is and how it was for us. So I want to just kind of lay that out straight. And, funny how that works out as we talk about like standards and things, because one of the sponsors that's been ongoing here for our show at BYOS Radio has been the ANSI Institute, which is the American National Standard Institute. So you've probably heard of them, things like things on light bulbs and just about anything on the planet, right, that has a standard to it. One of their great phrases is that standards make the world go round, but they also dictate what is round, right? And that's where ANSI comes in. So check them out at blog.ansi.org/pod. They've got some podcasts going on themselves about standards and how they relate to you. So thanks again to Boris and all the folks over at the ANSI Institute for helping me out, and I'm glad I can help them out. So let's move on. So hyperconvergence and what it does and what it's all about, right? So let's kind of start hopefully at the basics at square one and then work our way backwards, right? So kind of in a nutshell, hyperconvergence is everything is in one platform. So if you're used to the typical server platform where you have, or your data center platform, right, where you have a server, you have a SAN of some sort, NetApp, EMC, whatever, and then you have some connectivity in between, some switches or some other connectivity in between those devices. So one kind of controls the other, right? And if you have connectivity issues, whatever, from your servers to your SAN, then if you're running VMs or whatever, then you start having some issues. Well, with hyperconverged, you're effectively, everything is software defined. So you might have heard of SD-WAN, right? Software defined wide area networking, so SD-WAN. So think of hyperconvergence as software defined data center, right? And they don't call it that, but that's more or less what it is. So you, for instance, you could buy whoever your vendor is, and again, we'll get into our vendors here in just a few minutes, but you buy from your vendor, you say, okay, I need this amount of space, storage space, I need this amount of processors, I need this amount of RAM. And in your typical environment, you would buy a server that houses your VMware, your Hyper-V, whatever your hypervisor is going to be, and you put some RAM and some stuff on that. And then in your SAN, you really beef that SAN up, right? Some RAM and some disk space. All right, so on Hyperconverged, you can kind of mix and match, right? So you can start small and say, okay, I need this one node, and it's going to have this, this, and this as far as hard drive, RAM, and processor, right? Your three core components. But as you grow, you can find, wow, man, I really don't I have more space than I thought, but I can't build any more VMs because I'm running out of RAM or I'm running out of processor. So you buy your next node and you're like, hey, so last time I had kind of a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So this time I want to go heavy on RAM. So I want to build out more RAM in this box, maybe a few processors, but I don't need any more hard drive space. So the entire node is nothing but RAM and processors. And then down the road, you're going to say, wow, man, I need a third node. Do the same thing. Well, now I'm starting to run out of hard drive space, and I still need some more processors, but I got enough RAM. So let's put in this amount of space, and let's put in that much processing power. So you get to mix and match. And what happens at the hypervisor level is that these machines don't realize there's more than one. They're like in a nerd sort of way, like Star Trek Borg, right? We are Borg, we are one, right? And that's how they see themselves. They see themselves as one device. They don't have to go across the wire to grab data, right? They don't have to do any of that stuff. It's all local to them. And when you have multiple nodes, depending on the vendor, right, you're connecting at gigabit to 10 gigabit or even 40 gigabit connectivity from node to node, right, via direct fiber, or assuming that the nodes are even in diverse data centers, right, which again, depending on your situation, may or may not be a thing, and we'll talk about our infrastructure. So, when you talk about building these infrastructures, you're thinking about, okay, I know how much my NetApp or my EMC, I know my IOPS, I know all this stuff. Well, again, depending on the vendor, and I'll go ahead and start throwing out names. So we tested in-house Nutanix for roughly 40 days. We brought one of their boxes in our facility, and we spun it up. Now, why we wanted to look at Nutanix was because they have their own new hypervisor that is a competitor to VMware and Hyper-V. So our initial thought was, hey, we're going to save some money, and instead of buying the crazy expensive VMware hypervisor licenses, we are going to buy Nutanix and spin up under their hypervisor, because that is free or included, maybe not free, but included in the price you're paying for their boxes. So we brought in their device, we brought in their engineers, and we talked to them about our environment and what we wanted to try. And honestly, they told us. Now again, we're talking about a little bit more than a year ago. They told us, hey, our hypervisor is pretty new. Some of the things that you guys just said you wanted to try, we have tried in lab, but not in real. So don't put this stuff in production yet, because we don't know how it's going to react. So fair. That's what we do. So we brought it up. And so the things we had to do was we had to download a converter from them to convert a VMware, VM machine version 8 into the Nutanix machine versions, right? So we do some conversions of the VMs. Took a little bit of time, not crazy, but it took a little bit of time. And then we import those and spin them up and do our thing, right? So the conversion process wasn't bad. The import process was about what you'd expect, and things started spinning up. Well, then what we started seeing was every time on a reboot for VMs, we had problems, losing drivers and losing connection to the actual VM, like the virtual NIC would go away, just kind of random things, right? So again, not really, Nutanix told us that, things were new. They didn't know how it was going to react. So it was all fair. And again, to be honest, after a year or so ago, we have not retested, because we ultimately did not buy Nutanix. So that stuff, they're still in business. They're still a viable company. So clearly, they've been working on their things, and I would expect nothing less. Their engineers were great to work with, but their stuff just didn't work for us. So we were honestly afraid that after having that experience, that even if we brought VMware on top of their platform or Hyper-V, that we still have problems, and it's probably unfair, but in the end, that's where we landed, and so we ultimately bought HP's SimpliVity product. Expensive, yes. Had to continue using VMware's licensing because we were not going to go to Hyper-V, and SimpliVity doesn't offer its own hypervisor. So VMware is where we stayed. So we brought in the SimpliVity folks. We demoed their stuff in our shop, and then we spent a whole lot of money. So I'll tell you that we spent more than 200,000, less than 800,000, but I won't tell you anything else. But we spent quite a bit of money. But to be fair, that money included a complete refresh. More than 50 switches throughout our hospital, 40 gigabit switches, so that the I almost called them Nutanix. Sorry guys, the SimpliVity nodes could talk to each other at 40 gigabit fiber capability. So we spent a lot of money because our thought was, hey, if we're going to bring in this new stuff on the back end for our data center and hyperconverged and fast flash array and SSDs, why are we going to stick them on 8-year-old switches, right? So since we were previously an HP environment, we bought some new Aruba /HP switching and went forward. So just to give you some idea that that's where we landed. Pros and cons, right? So let's talk about pros and cons. So the pros, of course, we're talking about fast. Everything for us is on flash array. So I spin up a VM, 1 terabyte server is booted from end to end in roughly 38, 40 seconds. A completely turned off server right about the same time. And if it's smaller, 500, 600 megs, or gigs, we're still under 30 seconds. So they're fast, and that's what they should be. Reboots the same. Reboots are pretty quick. Used to be you could walk away, from your cup of coffee and come back and wait for the reboot, but not no more. So fast. Things like let's talk about some things that you might have experienced. So I'll stay on the fast, and then we're going to move to other topics like backups and RPO and RTO and things like that. But let's talk about fast, and why does fast matter, and why do these platforms matter? So back in the old days, you had the old storage systems are like LUNs, right? You had to have your LUNs, and you had to attach a controller, you had to get a RAID array and all that stuff, and you made your LUNs, and that's how you assigned VMs, right? LUN 1 housed your server production, LUN 2 housed your server development, right, et cetera, et cetera. And you had to watch out because you would have what we call the I/O blender, right? You have database servers doing their thing. You had file storage kind of doing its thing. You had application servers doing their thing. You had domain controllers doing their thing, right? So everybody kind of had their own I/Os going different directions. And some of these LUNs would be like, whoo, hey, I'm a database server over here, and if you had the same LUN was maybe a file server or a application server, then you might be competing for I/Os, right? God help you if you put VDI in the same place where you might have only 10 to 20 IOPS per user, but on the other hand, you might have what's called the VDI boot storm, right? Everybody comes into work at 8, 9 o'clock, and they all boot up their thin clients, their VDI, and then you have the boot storm, which is IAP hell for your SAN. Well, with a hyperconverged box, no more, right? The VDI boot storm is gone. So that's just a great example of how these things work, right? They have constant CPUs. The bandwidth from device to device is not really a thing anymore, right? You don't really have to worry about that. not like you had to. Read writes, right? So you're talking about read writes back and forth. You had dedupe and compression things going on, and we're going to talk about that with our Nutanix or our Hyper. Gosh, I've said Nutanix twice now. So, hey guys, Nutanix. Clearly, I don't hate you because I keep saying your name. But yeah, if you go out and check out the Twitter at BYOS Radio, today I posted up a live screenshot from just today of our SimpliVity environment and where we stood. And let's talk about that for just a minute. So when I say I spent all that money. It's all me. And we start looking at that at the hospital system. We had roughly 88 gigs of stuff, and we're thinking we need to buy 88 gigs worth of data center storage, right? So I keep saying gigs, terabytes, 88 terabytes, right? So when we go to buy all this space, we decided that we're going to go hot, meaning we bought 2 of everything, so that our primary data center is up and running, our secondary data center is hot and active and getting real-time data sent from our primary. That way, if we go down, boom, we're up on the other side within 3 heartbeats. Also, as a side note, if you have just a VM for some reason going haywire, maybe a software update or something caused a VM on your primary to go stupid, the VM on the other side can take over, right, instantly. So if the one server somehow gets stuck in a boot loop or some other weird thing, and the VM in your second data center sees that, hey, 3 heartbeats, that server's not answering, I need you to come active, right? It'll just bring that one VM active and let it run from the secondary data center, or it'll live migrate across in real time. And one of the things about SimpliVity and HP during our conversations with them, where their engineers used a term that we really did not expect. They said, we guarantee that if you have a 1 terabyte or smaller server or VM of any sort, whether it be a desktop, which why would you have a terabyte desktop, but we'll have it brought back online from off to on with migration or data recovery, restore from a backup in under 1 minute. And of course, our first words are prove it, and they did. And of course, we argued with, well, in a test environment, that's real, blah, blah, blah. Well, I can tell you, as a side note, that during live production, we decided to bring one up. At nighttime, in a maintenance window, we turned one off, and we migrated the other one from a backup, and we got it on, and it was from dead to moving in under a minute, and it was a shade over a terabyte in size. So that's real. That's a real story. Anyway, I lost where I was. Okay, so we're back. So we're talking about the hyperconverged, and we're talking about what it can do. When we were deciding to look at the 88 terabytes, we were again thinking 1-to-1, right? So we were looking at our current environment and said, wow, this is how much RAM we have now, and we need a little bit more, so let's buy some more. And there's how much processing power. Yeah, we need a little bit more, so we better buy some more because we knew we had new projects, new VMs, and we wanted to start getting ready for a VDI for the hospitals. So we thought overbought, right? So we get this stuff in, we start going live with things, and in the screenshot that you'll see on Twitter, if you got to at BYOS Radio, you'll see a live snap of today, right? So you're going to see that our total physical capacity was like 86.4 terabytes. We bought 88. We carved off a little bit for some other recovery things, but so we're right about 86 terabytes. We have 3.7 terabytes currently of virtual machines and their data over there. We have not fully migrated everything off of our old platform yet, but we have 93.9 terabytes of backups. So let's talk about that again. We have 86.4 terabytes of total capacity. We have 3.7 terabytes of live virtual machines up and running, and we have 93.9 terabytes of backups. So that tells us that we have a shade over 97.5 terabytes of VMs and backups on 86.4 terabytes of capacity. Now, if you're not looking at that screenshot, guess how much free space I have? Of the 86.4 of total capacity and 97.5 of VMs and backups, I have 84.9 terabytes free. Yes. That means I've used 1.6 terabytes of my total capacity. Why? Because of deduplication and compression. We are getting a 37-to-1 dedupe rate and a 1.7 to 1 compression rate, which means our SimpliVity efficiency is rated at 62.4 to 1. So what that means is that we did not believe HP when they told us how great their dedupe and compression is. Now this is over the course of a year. So, this thing every night it takes a look at all the data that's in its environment. It looks at all the stuff that's changed, and it runs a dedupe and compression cycle. So things change on a 24-hour cycle with our environment. So where we thought we needed 88 terabytes just to stay current, well, we're already over 96 terabytes or 97 terabytes, and we've only used 1.6 of that space because dedupe. So it's hugely efficient. That money alone, or that dedupe alone, has left us enough free space to start implementing VDI more than 8 months ahead of schedule, because we thought, well, now we got to wait to budget to get some new nodes, because you don't want your VDI infrastructure on the same nodes as the other if you can help it, right? I mean, it's not going to kill it, but because like VDI boot storms and things, you want some segregation if you can do it. So we have built a small 40 instance VM instance for VDI. In this same environment. So we have database servers, and we have domain servers, and we have VDI machines, and we have file servers, and we have application servers, all running effectively in the same nodes together. And we're getting 62.41 efficiency. We have more than 10 times our IOPS than we had before. Our read writes are crazy fast. Our average speed for reads is 0.1 millisecond. Our average write speed is just a shade. It varies, but I think our last look, our average was 0.8 millisecond for write. So, and that's with all the different conflicting IOP types of IO type of things, right? It's amazing stuff. It really is. And I would invite you to reach out at BYOS Radio. I'm happy to talk to you one-on-one. I'm happy to even maybe give you a quick tour of some stuff. So clearly I'm not going to let you just get into our system and run around. But, I'm not here to sell you SimpliVity. Again, we have not touched Nutanix. There are other hyperconverged players in the market now. Back then, Nutanix and SimpliVity were the biggest two. So Nutanix has grown. They clearly do stuff, right? But we just had a comfort zone with HP as a whole. And once we decided that's the route we were going to go, we thought, well, okay, we're going to go with SimpliVity with our Hyperconverged, so let's get it on. And that's what we did. We got it on. So All right, so I'm going to take a second. I'm going to get a quick drink of water. But while we're doing that, I also want to talk a little bit about the Sonic Temple Music Fest coming up in Columbus, Ohio in May of this year. This is their first year up there. They're at the Matt Free Stadium, which is the home of the Columbus Crew MSL team, or MLS. Listen to me, MSL, missiles, right? MLS. 3-day outdoor heavy metal fest. I can't wait. This is the first year. It's replacing an old event that no longer happens. But take a listen, and hopefully I'll see you there.
Ladies and gentlemen, everybody's going to the party, have a real good time. Are you ready? Get up! The Sonic Temple Art and Music Festival has arrived. Matt Free Stadium, Columbus, Ohio. 3 days, May 17th through the 19th. America's #1 rock music festival is here with Foo Fighters, System of a Down, Disturbed, Sonic Temple with Bring Me the Horizon, Ghost, Hailstorm, Lamb of God, The Cult, The Hives, The Struts, Meshuggah, The Distillers, and rare appearances by Joe Jett and Prodigy. Go to SonicTempleFestival.com for everything. The Foo Fighters, System of a Down, Disturbed, Bring Me the Horizon, Ghost, and special comedy tent headliners, Andrew Dice Clay, Henry Rollins, and more. Go to SonicTempleFestival.com. See ya at the temple.
All right. For those of you that are into the heavy metal scene, you heard in this promo about Prodigy coming. But, of course, in the last week, the tragic news coming from that band. So they will not be attending. Papa Roach has been announced this morning as replacing them at that event. So our condolences out to the family and friends. Prodigy, I can't imagine. Enough said. So let's get back into hyperconvergence, and let's talk about some pros, some cons. So one of the things that we heard as staff members, right, as we're going through this stuff, the sales reps, they're there to sell us, right? So they're talking to the money people, and they're telling us about how you can be more predictable and the scalability, improved utilization, reduced provisioning time, and then the kicker, fewer personnel, right? So they were talking about how once we get our environment up and running, how big our organization was. And a lot of IT organizations are siloed, right? You're the server person, you're a network person, you're a security person, you're a software and applications person, right? You're a desktop hardware person, help desk. Well, for us, thankfully, we're small enough in our IT department that some of us share jobs and or back each other up, right? We all have our own specialties, but then we cross-train. So that way somebody can actually go on vacation or take a sick day. So for a minute there, though, we heard about fewer personnel. Wait a minute, right? So think about that. That part matters. People consider hyperconverged infrastructure as the cloud, and it kind of is. It compares well to, quote, air quotes, the cloud, but it's not quite that. What's some of the great things, though? So besides the speed that we've already talked about, and how fast things come up, and I want to reiterate again that when they tell you that you can spin up from dead to fully recovered from backup 1 terabyte VM in a minute, that's real truth right there. So it does happen. We've tried it. But you also, one of the things about SimpliVity that really caught our attention is backups. Now, as a VMware shop, we have also been a Veeam shop for a long time, and especially because Veeam, in the last couple of years, started doing hardware backups too. So you could back up physical servers, not just VMs. So that was a real boon for us. We could get away from tape entirely and back up our stuff that way. So that was a real big deal. And SimpliVity came along and they said, hey, we got this great backup capability. So all the things that Veeam does for you, we can do. We can take backups and we can ship it wherever you want it. Do you want it on a SAN sitting somewhere else? Do you want it cloud-based? Do you want it to? We can carve out a little space of our own. Grab a whole other node, buy a node, stick it in a closet somewhere, and that'll be your backup target. And it's on a SimpliVity node that looks like it's the same to us. And so we were like, hey, great story, bro. So let's move on with that. So we did that, and some trial and error. Things worked good, some things didn't, and then we figured it out. And it's like anything else, right? You have backups. Well, since it's included, honestly, it saved us a boatload in Veeam licensing. So some of our cost of ownership went down because we were able to start phasing out Veeam. And so we still have some physical servers that we use Veeam on, but our licensing went from roughly 400 servers, processors, and things down to right about 20. So you can imagine what that price reduction was for Veeam. Something that we also have learned in the time of having our infrastructure is that, as with many IT technologies, you have a GUI that does a lot of work right for you, that you can press some buttons, do some automation, some auto magical stuff, and you're good to go. But if you SSH in, you have some command line magic things that you can do that just doesn't happen at the GUI level. And SimpliVity is no different. So we found that we could take our backups and do some wonderful things. One of the things that we're worried about was ransomware, right? With tapes, you back up your stuff, ship it to a tape, take the tape out of the library, and store it for whatever, a week, 30 days, 6 months, whatever it is. But when you start getting into this fast stuff, right? So we're talking about, I told you that our infrastructure is hot, right? So we can move some data across the wire pretty quick. But that also means ransomware or viruses also can hop pretty quick. We got to be on our P's and Q's, right? Our monitoring's got to be in place. Our other things got to be working fast. So how do we defeat ransomware going across, that connection from hot, or some person created some drive mapping thing and didn't tell IT about it, and they weren't supposed to do it, and we didn't catch it, right? So now we got an SMB share that's opened up a hole. How do we defeat that in a fast hyperconverged world? Well, through command line magic, we can create a setup where we have our target backup place. So we have our live environment, we have our hot backup environment, and then we have a second target. So once we take a backup, we write that data to our second target. Now I know you're going to say, hey Dave, dummy, ransomware and viruses still see your targets and will infect them. And I agree. But in our case, through the back-end SSH and some great skills from the HP folks, we were able to create a script that effectively says, okay, at X time or at the execution of this function, you open this connection, you do these things, and at the end of this function, you disconnect that connection. So you're effectively creating a flash version of a tape drive, right? It connects, it does its thing, it disconnects. Perfect. Now we don't have to ship it off out of our environment to the cloud. We're a hospital, HIPAA matters, right? So we don't want a bunch of data floating around across the wire, even if it is encrypted in transit and encrypted at rest, and it is. We still don't want that. We don't want it out there. Why even risk it, right? So there you go. So that's just to kind of give you an idea of some of the automagical ways of things that you can do with a hyperconverged infrastructure that allows you to beat ransomware and beat other bad things. Once your hyperconverged infrastructure, in our case SimpliVity, once you have your nodes up and running, adding another node is a piece of cake. It's really just a few minutes process, and once you add that node, the other nodes don't know that it's a separate device. They just like automatically like, hey, we got more processors, we got more RAM, more storage, whatever it is that you configured that node to be. Hey, we got more, right? So there you go, and you can create whole different um, setups, right? So like I talked about, we're going to change ours out to be a VDI setting so that we can spec the nodes that we need for VDI, right? Heavy on processors, heavy on RAM, and not worry about storage space because we got that on the other boxes. So we'll buy our new nodes to be heavy on those, save the money on storage, and bring up an entire set of VMs where they might be grabbing processor from this node, that node, RAM from across the hall, hard drive space from down the road, and it all thinks it's right there and at speeds of less than zero point 0.2 millisecond. So it's pretty awesome stuff. I can't imagine now. We almost bought the traditional. We were literally within days of signing a purchase. Well, we did actually sign the purchase order, but we didn't send it in and complete it. We were within days of that at the time because we had seen Hyperconverged stuff at different seminars and demo days, and everybody was really, from a presentation standpoint, like, hey, look at this new stuff, right? And we're a hospital. We can't be out there. Hospitals are notoriously slow in updating infrastructure and architecture because, with the healthcare system, a lot of things are old, X-ray machines and scanners and this, that, and the other things that have been in the facility maybe, 5, 10, 20, 30 years. Those things don't upgrade to new technology very easily, so you always have to account for backwards compatibility. And the last thing we wanted to do is get into this environment where they're telling us, well, hey, this is new, this technology's been out 6 months or a year. Hey, can you give us a demonstration through one of your customers? Well, we don't have any customers right now in the healthcare sector, but we can show you this one retailer that's using one node so that their cash registers can talk back over virtualized systems, right? Something like that. And it was tough. HP was able to, though, provide us with a couple of hospitals that had their infrastructure in place, and we were able to call them directly and just talk to their IT people. So that was also another feather at the time in HP's cap. And again, I want to say it one more time. It's not to say that Nutanix is not a strong competitor now. I just don't know. But at the time, it was hard for them to give us a full demonstration in our industry because they just did not yet have customers in production in the healthcare industry at our size. So it was hard. But data recovery, I just want to say that data recovery from end to end, we can so I will back up, and what I didn't say before was when you implement your, I'll go with SimpliVity, but when you implement SimpliVity, you install a VMware like you normally would, right? So you're running on your VMware. You have your, we're on a newer version. I don't want to give out too much details of our environment, but you have your VMware, and then you install the SimpliVity controller. It's a VM, and the software as kind of an add-on to VMware. And so you have your typical VMware vSphere control set, and then when you right-click on things or look at other menus, you'll see the new embedded SimpliVity functions that you can do. And creating backup and restores is just like using Veeam or Tape Drive. You create schedules, you do your thing. When you go to do a restore, It's really no different than probably what you're used to. You open up that function and you find your point in time. You right click and you restore, and you just choose, I want to restore to my original location, or I want to restore to this other place. And as long as you're restoring it to a target that can handle it, from a processor, so my point being is you could actually restore outside of your production environment. Maybe you just have a VMware box sitting off to the side, right? A whole new box hasn't been touched. You just spun it up yesterday. It's not part of your SimpliVity infrastructure, but it's connected. And because it's a VMware host, we can see it. So we could restore over there. But maybe that box is hard drive, right? Traditional hard drive, traditional processor and RAM. So as long as it's got enough to run that specific VM, you could push that VM over there right out of your SimpliVity. And then once you fix whatever your original problem is, you spin it back up inside your SimpliVity. Or, of course, you can move it within your SimpliVity nodes. So a lot of options of how you spin it back up. But if you're staying within your SimpliVity environment, like we said, if it's less than a terabyte, it's up in under a minute, and that is tested in real production and confirmed by us. The reality, though, for us was that our environment came up in under 40 seconds, both tests, and we have had as big as a 1.6 terabyte move across the wire and be ready to go in about a minute. Then I think it was 3 seconds. So a lot of stuff moves quick in that environment, as you would expect or hope. Right. All right. Before we end this thing tonight, I have one more favor of you, and that is to give me about 20 seconds every time to also thank one of my other sponsors, which is Kaspersky, and they've got some blogs and some other things going on too. And I just want to say thank you to them for jumping in with Bring Your Own Security Radio and taking the time and trust in us to get the word out about them.
If you like Bring Your Own Security, you should check out the Transatlantic Cable podcast from Kaspersky Lab. They look at cybersecurity issues that affect everyone and also make sure the podcast fits your busy day by keeping them to 20 minutes or less. Check it out and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Right on. So they're in the same places we are. You can find them over on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Music, the typical podcasting softwares, RSS feeds, etc. So Transatlantic Cable podcast. Give them a shout out. And again, thank you to Kaspersky. Thank you to the Sonic Temple Music Festival. Thank you to my friends again over at the American National Standards Institute, ANSI. And again, thank you to all of you for tuning in and listening. It's always a pleasure to share what I know, meet people that I don't know, and hear about the things that they do know. So what that means for you is give me a holler. Hit me up. You can hit me up on Twitter at BYOS Radio. You can follow me there. You can respond. You can direct message me. You can go to Facebook and find me under BYOS Radio as well. I would love to hear what you think about Hyperconverged. If you have questions, I will answer anything that I honestly know. If I'm guessing, I'll tell you I've got a guess. If I have no freaking idea, I'll tell you that too. Happy to point you to some vendors. If you're going out to different events, a lot of these vendors show up, especially like, say, in May here in Cincinnati. I'll be going to the, there's two, and I always forget which one's in April and which one's in May. But in May of this year in Sharonville, Ohio, which is a suburb just 12 miles north of downtown Cincinnati, there is a one-day event called Secure World. They're actually a national event that travels city to city and hosts security conferences one day and some day 2 days, some cities. But I will be speaking and presenting my Art of the Hack presentation. It's basically 1 hour end to end. Where does a hacker start and where do they finish, right? So come check us out over at that event, Secure World Cincinnati, in May. You can check them out online. I also want to give a new shout out to some folks that I personally got myself involved with here in Cincinnati. They are called Hive 13. You can check them out at hive13.org. They used to be called a hackerspace, but they have evolved. Now they are a makerspace. If you live in Cincinnati, you can visit that location. You can visit them on the web. You come down on a Tuesday, which is meeting night, about 7 o'clock, and meet the folks. We have a huge woodworking shop with all kinds of drill presses and table saws and grinders and sanders and a big CNC machine, which is a wood CNC machine, which is pretty kick-ass. We have a metalworking shop with laser cutters and welders and powdering things and all kinds of cool stuff over there. We have a glass blowing station. If you want to learn the art of blowing glass into decorative things, you can do that. We have the Fab Lab, which has a metal laser cutter, all kinds of 3D printers, including a big 9 square foot 3D printer if you've got something that big you want to make. We have a CAD station over there. We have electronic station with microscopes and oscilloscopes. We have multiple soldering stations. I think I said 3D printers, but at last look we had like 6 or 7 of those. Gosh, what else? Every day we're adding new stuff. I heard tonight that we're putting together a mold making station so you can make molds if that's what you want to do, and some other stuff. So it's a great place, and it's not really owned. There's a committee of officers, right? They get elected once a year. You can volunteer to serve, but it's member driven, member owned. There's materials there that you can use. You can bring your own for a really big project. What can I say? It's open 24 hours a day. You have 24-hour day access. You get an RFID card, and you head on down there and you get yourself in, and you work on your thing, man. You reserve a tool if you think you're going to need it for 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday. You want to make sure you have time. You get online and reserve the tool and do your thing. So if you've never heard of a makerspace or a hackerspace, Google that in your area and see if these kind of places exist where you live. For us, being able to go do woodworking, have some fun with that. Teaching my daughter glass blowing. She's 12, will be 13 soon. The ladies that are a member of this thing are getting together with kind of a crafting circle sort of thing. So sewing machines and crafting and making things in that way. So it's not just about like He-Man saws and tools and blah blah blah, metal working and iron pounding and all that stuff, right? There's some of that, but plenty of ladies are involved, and they have their own ideas of what they consider fun, and maybe that means pounding a hammer, maybe that means sewing something, maybe that means making glass ornaments and decorative things. It means something different to everybody. So it's exciting. Electronics, if you've never learned how to build a breadboard or how to make your own flashy thingy, plenty of people are just waiting to talk to you and hang out with you at the table and show you how to do it yourself. And anyway, enough time about that, but hive13.org, check them out. If you are in Cincinnati, please come down and see us on a Tuesday night at 7. It's open. You might want to visit hive13.org and just shoot an email. Let somebody know you're coming because the doors are locked. We have to know you're coming when you hit the buzzer so we can let you in. Otherwise, you might get ignored just in case we think that you're just somebody messing around, right? So check out Hive13. What else do I got? Before we finish on this SimpliVity stuff and hyperconverged stuff, when you get into looking at what hyperconverged can do for you, and is hyperconverged right for you, even if you're a small, I don't know, 30, 50 employee company. At that point, you might be a shade too small, unless you're a dev. Maybe you're into development, and if you're doing software development, if you're doing modeling, architectural drawings, things like that, then yes, even as a small company, hyperconverged infrastructure will do wonders for you. Now, you can say, well, why do I want to spend 100 grand on this stuff when I could just buy me some cloud space, right? Some um, platform as a service or software as a service space off of some provider online, and why do I want to do that? Yeah, okay, that's fair. Maybe you don't, but if you have an internet issue, right, to your platform as a service provider or your software as a service provider, and you can't get to your files and to your data stored in a cloud for 8-9 hours, and you got 20 employees, that's 180 hours of productivity wasted because your internet service provider was down. Conversely, you could spend the money and have your hyper-converged environment for a good 4 or 5 years before it needs an upgrade, and spread out that cost of ownership and that return on investment over that time frame. And if you even had 2 outages or 2 4 to 8 hour issues throughout the course of the year, and that happened over 5 more times over 5 years, right? Now you're talking 10 outages in 5 years. How much money did that cost you, and was it worth it? Whereas you could have all that speed and control right there in your hands. So yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of arguments why it's too expensive. I get that, and I probably would be one of them if it was my money, at least. But once you see it, once you experience it for real, right? Get away from the sales pitch. Get away from the over-the-top nonsense at vendor booths and things like that, and find somebody like us or some other customer of whatever vendor you're interested in, and talk to them. See if you can have either a remote virtual tour, or if it's close enough, go on site and take a look. And you'll be surprised. We went from 8 racks of things to half of a rack and half of a rack. So each data center had 4 racks, 8 total in our primary and backup data center. And now each data center needs a half rack. And that's in order to fit our nodes and our switches and routers, things to get the connectivity, from A to B. So space-wise, that's one thing. But then you're also talking about a reduction in HVAC costs, overall maintenance costs. Big deal, big deal. There's a lot of things to consider when you're looking at it. But I also just, I did say it, but I want to remind you that if you are considering something like this, you want to make sure that you consider what else is in your environment, right? So don't just go and put this brand new cool stuff on top of like old stuff. You're only as good as your weakest link. We all know that. And if you spend 100, 200, 300 grand, whatever it is, on all this cool, fast, hyper-converged hot rod, and you're still driving, that hot rod on a Yugo platform, you're only going to get, whatever the Yugo can do for you. So take a look at the rest of your infrastructure if you're going to go this route. It will make a difference. It will make a huge difference. All right. That's about all I've got for tonight, I think. I do have one thing that has nothing to do with hyperconverged that I came across just accidentally. I don't know, just a few days ago. 2 things, actually. So I want to just take time to comment on these. I think they're funny / great. And if you already know about it, whatever, that's cool. But so there's these two things. One is called the Endless OS. So it's Endless, ENDLESSOS.com, endless.com. So it's basically a self-made Linux version thingy of a new operating system designed for families. It's free to download. They also have some pre-made things like little, not Raspberry Pi, but that size of mini boxes that are pre-made that you can buy. But you can download the OS for free, and inside that OS comes more than like 100 apps and things that talk to like Microsoft's Office and Android and things like that, and tools. So even if there's no internet access, you can still use all these tools. And what's really cool about this Endless OS is that it's built for families, right? So the idea is that there are a lot of tools in there for you to make sure you and the kids are safe, right, from bad things, and you help keep the kids safe, right? So there's video games embedded, music videos, 50,000 Wikipedia articles I think I read, video lessons, all kinds of stuff. And that's, again, even if you have no internet access at the time. And these things are pretty small, so you could pack them up and take them on vacation with you. So if you ended up, say, in the middle of the mountains in a cabin, there's no internet and the kids are driving you nuts, they at least have a computer that is right in their backpack, and they can use it. So, of course, you got to have a monitor, but yeah, you'll work that out. Anyway, check out endlessos.com. I get nothing for that. I just thought it was kind of cool. Yes, you can download Linux. Yes, you can download buy Raspberry Pis or NUCs or any of the other mini machines. This is just another one of those. But this one, doesn't require you to learn anything about Linux. This one's very family friendly. It's very easy for 5 and 6-year-old kids to just pick up and start using and be very intuitive. I downloaded it and gave it a try and was amazed at just how easy it was. So the other thing that I thought was more for me and maybe for you is this thing called Umail, free, whatever, but it's an app that you effectively download. You punch in your cell phone number, you download the app, and it stops robocalls. So if you get a call, one of those robocalls or telemarketer calls, if it's coming from one of the known numbers or somebody, known meaning it's in a database already, but if somebody else got a call that uses this app and they mark it as a robocall, it goes up into their cloud, and then everybody gets to benefit from that marking, of it being a BS call. And it basically tells them, hey, you're not allowed to call this number, you're blocked, right? And it just automatically blocks them out, and your cell phone doesn't even ring. So that's pretty kick-ass. But it's called Umail, YOUMAIL.com, Umail.com. Again, free. I don't get nothing out of it, but man, it's cool. I downloaded it yesterday. A friend of mine told me about it, and there's some paid features if you really want to go the route. But you can do free conference calls for free, robocall, cloud-based visual voicemail, and store messages. And the paid versions, you get unlimited messages, you get voicemail to text, and then you can have like a unified home, cell, and work voicemail with just one email box if that's what you wanted. Plus, you can get into like really professionally recorded greetings and voice message routing to other email ad boxes and professional call routings up to 10 different lines. You get a vanity phone number, all that stuff if you want to pay for it. But just the free part is good enough for me, and it's awesome. So YOUMAIL.com. All right, that's it for real. That's all I got. Thank you for joining tonight. I am Dave the IT Guy. See you next week.
Okay, that's it. Hopefully you've been inspired to learn more, or at the very least, heard something new that you didn't know already. Don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at BYOS Radio and Facebook at facebook.com/BYOS Radio. You can download each episode from iHeartRadio, Apple Music, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and just about any other podcasting software you like. You can also listen live every Tuesday night at 9 Eastern from the BringYourOwnSecurity.net website. You might even learn CPE for your IT certifications, so tune in weekly.